had been home alone for less than 2 hours when someone knocked on the side door. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and I was supposed to be at school. I had a bad cold, so my mom let me stay home. She left for work around 8:10 that morning, stopped at my bedroom before leaving, and said the same thing she always said whenever I stayed home alone. "Keep the door locked." "I know, Mom. I'm serious." "I know." She smiled, grabbed her keys, and left. At the time, neither of us thought anything of it. Our house was in a quiet neighborhood called Pine Creek, about 20 minutes outside Dayton. We'd lived there for almost a year. It wasn't a huge house, but it had an awkward layout. The front door opened into the living room, the kitchen was at the back, and beside the kitchen was a small laundry room with a second exterior door. That door was almost never used. My dad had even joked once that if somebody wanted to break into the house, they would probably choose that door because the lock was old. I remember laughing at him. I didn't think about that conversation again until that afternoon. Around 2:15, I was upstairs in my bedroom watching videos on my phone when I heard a vehicle stop outside. I didn't pay attention. Then I heard a car door close. A few seconds later, another. I looked out my window. A white pickup truck was parked across the street. There was one man inside. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting there. I watched him for maybe 10 seconds before pulling the curtain closed. It wasn't unusual enough to make me nervous. People parked on our street all the time. Then I heard footsteps. Not inside the house. Outside. They came from the side of the house. I sat up. The footsteps stopped. I waited. Nothing. I walked downstairs and checked the kitchen window. The side yard was empty. I could see the gate. It was open. That bothered me. I was certain we'd closed it. I went to the laundry room and checked the side door. Locked. I pushed on it once. It didn't move. I went back upstairs. About 5 minutes later, knock, knock, knock. I stopped walking. The sound had come from the side door. Not the front. The side door. For some reason, hearing those 3 knocks made my stomach tighten. I stood in the hallway listening. Nothing. Then, knock. This time slower. I didn't move. My mom had always told me never to open the door for someone I wasn't expecting. So I didn't. I called her. She answered quickly. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Someone's at the side door." "Who?" "I don't know." "Did they say anything?" "No." "Don't open it." I wasn't going to. "Go upstairs." I started walking. Then she said, "Wait." "What?" "Did you see anyone outside?" "No." "Okay, lock your bedroom door." Something about her voice made me stop. "Mom, what's going on?" "Nothing. Just do what I'm saying." I went upstairs and locked my bedroom door. A minute later, my phone buzzed. It was my dad. "Don't go downstairs," I called him. He answered immediately. "What happened?" "Mr. Harris called me." Our next-door neighbor was an older man who spent most afternoons sitting near his front window. "What did he say?" "He saw somebody walking behind our house." I looked toward my window. "Who?" "He doesn't know." "Did he see the person come to the door?" "No." I lowered my voice. "Do you think he's still there?" "I don't know." Then I heard something. A faint metallic click. My dad heard it through the phone. "What was that?" "I don't know." "Stay upstairs." I didn't answer. I was staring at my bedroom door. Then I heard the side door handle move. Slowly. I could hear the metal mechanism turning downstairs. My dad said, "Did you hear that?" "Yeah." "Don't move." The handle stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then it moved again. Harder. Someone was trying to open the door. I backed away from my bedroom door. My dad said, "Call the police." I already? No. "Call them now." I dialed 911. The dispatcher asked me what was happening. I tried to explain, but my voice kept shaking. "I'm upstairs. Someone is trying to get into my house." "Are you alone?" "Yes." "Do you know if the person has entered the house?" "I don't know." "Are all the doors locked?" "I think so." Don't go downstairs to check. I won't. The dispatcher told me officers were on their way. I sat on the floor beside my bed. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard the side door open. My heart dropped. There was no loud crash, no breaking glass, just the quiet sound of the door opening. Someone had gotten inside. I whispered, "He's in." The dispatcher immediately said, "Stay where you are." I could hear footsteps downstairs, slow, careful. The person wasn't searching randomly. He seemed to know exactly where he was going. I heard a cabinet open, then close, a drawer, then another. I started wondering if he was looking for something. Money, keys, a weapon. Then I heard the stairs. One step, pause, another, pause. He was coming upstairs. I moved farther into the corner of my room. The dispatcher asked, "Can you hear him?" "Yes." "Stay quiet." The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, then stopped. I could see a shadow underneath my bedroom door. Someone was standing outside. I held my breath. My phone was pressed against my chest. The man knocked once. I didn't move. He knocked again. Then he said, "Hey." I stared at the door. He sounded completely calm. "Your dad sent me." I knew that was a lie. My dad hadn't sent anybody. The dispatcher whispered, "Do not respond." The man tried the door handle. It moved slightly. Locked. He stopped. Then he said, "Open the door." I stayed silent. A few seconds passed. Then he tried again. Harder. The door shook. I thought he was going to break it. Instead, he suddenly stopped. His footsteps moved away. I heard him walk down the hallway, then down the stairs. I stayed frozen. The dispatcher said, "Officers are almost there." I whispered, "Okay." Then I heard something downstairs. The front door opened. I heard a man's voice. "Hello?" I almost cried. But the dispatcher immediately said, "Don't answer. That's not the police." The footsteps moved quickly toward the back of the house. Then I heard the side door slam. A few seconds later, I heard shouting outside, "Police! Stop!" Then footsteps running across the yard. Another officer shouted, "He's running!" I stayed in my room until someone came upstairs and identified himself as an officer. When I finally opened the door, my legs were shaking so badly I had trouble standing. The officer looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Did he hurt you?" "No." "Good." They searched the entire house. The man was gone. But he'd left something behind. A black backpack in the laundry room. Inside were gloves, a screwdriver, bottled water, some food, and a roll of duct tape. The officer looked through the bag carefully. Then he asked, "Do you know this person?" "No." "Have you seen that pickup truck before?" I told him about the truck. He exchanged a look with another officer. The truck had been reported stolen that morning. They checked our neighbor's security camera. The footage showed the white pickup arriving around 2:10. The man stayed inside for several minutes. Then he got out. He didn't walk toward our front door. He went directly around the side of our house. The camera couldn't see what happened after that, but about 15 minutes later he appeared again. He was already wearing gloves. He opened our side gate. Then he disappeared from view. The police never found out how he got the side door open. There were no broken locks, no damaged windows, nothing. Which meant he'd either found a way around the lock, or he'd been watching us long enough to know exactly what he was doing. The man was never caught. For the next few months, my parents changed every lock in the house. They installed cameras, they added motion lights, and my mom stopped letting me stay home alone. But there was one detail that stayed with me. When the man was standing outside my bedroom door, he told me, "Your dad sent me." He knew I was upstairs. He knew which bedroom was mine. And he knew enough about my family to use my dad as an excuse. That meant this probably wasn't random. Someone had been watching the house, maybe for days, maybe longer. I don't know. We moved out the following year. Years later, I was driving through that neighborhood with a friend. We passed the old house. I almost didn't recognize it. The trees had grown taller. The paint had faded, but the side gate was still there. My friend slowed down. "Isn't this where you used to live?" "Yeah." We drove past. Then I noticed a white pickup parked farther down the street. I couldn't see the driver. My friend asked, "You want to stop?" "No." He looked at me. "Why?" I stared at the truck. "Just keep going." We kept driving. I never found out who that man was. I never found out why he chose our house. And I never found out how long he'd been watching us before that afternoon. But even now, whenever I'm home alone and I hear a knock at the door, I don't check who's outside. I don't look through the window. I don't even turn on the lights. I just make sure the door behind me is locked. Because the scariest part of that afternoon wasn't hearing someone downstairs. It was realizing that while I thought I was alone, someone else already knew exactly where I was. I was 17 when this happened, and I still remember exactly what I was doing when it started. It was a Wednesday afternoon in October. I had come home from school around 1:40, dropped my backpack near the stairs, and changed into an old t-shirt and sweatpants. My mom was working until the evening and my younger brother Noah had football practice. So I was alone. That wasn't unusual for me. My mom worked long hours, and we'd lived in the same neighborhood outside Dayton, Ohio for almost 6 years. It was one of those places where everyone knew everyone's cars, kids rode their bikes in the street, and nothing really happened. My mom still worried anyway. Before leaving that morning, she'd stood by the front door holding her coffee and said, "Haley, lock the door after me." "I will. And don't open it if someone knocks." "Mom, I know. I'm serious. I know." She gave me that look mothers give when they know you're not really listening. Then she pointed at me. "Phone with you?" "Yeah." "Good." She left. I locked the door. And by lunchtime, I'd forgotten the whole conversation. I made some noodles, watched TV, and started doing homework at the kitchen table. Around 2:30, I heard someone knock on the front door. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I looked toward the living room. "Mom?" No answer. I checked my phone. She hadn't texted me. I walked over to the door and looked through the glass panel beside it. Nobody was there. I waited for a few seconds. Nothing. I went back to the kitchen. Then my phone rang. It was Mom. "Hey, did you come home?" "No, why?" "Someone just knocked." "Who?" "I don't know. They're gone." There was a short pause. "Don't open the door, okay?" I didn't. "Good." "Mom, I'm not going to open the door for some random person." "I know, I'm just saying." "Okay." She told me she'd probably be home around 6. We hung up. I put my phone on the counter. Then I heard another knock. This time it came from the kitchen window. I stopped. Our kitchen had a big window above the sink. During the day, we usually kept the blinds halfway open because the backyard got plenty of sunlight. I slowly turned toward it. At first, I couldn't see anything. Then someone knocked again. Harder. I walked closer. There was a man standing outside. I couldn't see his entire body because the blinds were in the way, but I could see his hand against the glass. I stopped about 6 feet away. He didn't move. Then he knocked again. "Hello?" I didn't answer. He leaned closer. "Sorry, can you open this?" I felt my stomach tighten. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. "Can I help you?" A few seconds passed. Then he said, "Your mom asked me to stop by." That immediately sounded wrong. "My mom is at work." "I know." I stared at him. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a huge smile, just enough to make me uncomfortable. I took a step backward. Then he said my name. "Haley?" I froze. I hadn't told him my name. I grabbed my phone. "What's your name?" He looked through the glass. "Daniel." I didn't know any Daniel. Daniel who? He smiled again. Does it matter? I backed away from the window. He knocked once more. Come on, I just need a minute. I went upstairs. I locked my bedroom door and called Mom. She answered immediately. What happened? He knows my name. What? The guy outside, he knows my name. How? I don't know. Where is he? Kitchen window. Haley, listen to me, don't go back downstairs. I won't. Call the police. I hesitated. Mom, please. Her voice sounded different now. Not annoyed, not worried, actually scared. I called 911. The dispatcher asked me to stay upstairs and keep the door locked. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard something downstairs, a drawer opening. I sat completely still. Another sound, something being moved across the kitchen counter. I whispered, "He's inside." The dispatcher told me not to leave my room. I could hear my own breathing, then footsteps. Slow footsteps. They came from the kitchen. 1, 2, 3. Then they stopped. I heard the front door open. A few seconds later, a police officer shouted from outside, "Police, come outside where we can see you." Nothing. Another officer shouted, "Police, show us your hands." Still nothing. I stayed in my room until they told me it was safe. 2 officers searched the house. They found nobody. The back door was locked. All the windows were locked. Nothing appeared to be missing. 1 officer came upstairs. "You did the right thing staying in here." I nodded. He asked me to describe the man. I told him everything I could remember. Dark jacket, gray shirt, brown hair. Probably in his 30s, around 6 feet tall, and I told him about the name. Daniel? That's what he said. Do you know anybody by that name? No. Did he tell you why he was there? He said my mom sent him. The officer wrote that down. Then he looked at me. Your mother didn't send anybody? No. Okay. He left. Mom came home about 20 minutes later. She didn't even take off her coat. She walked straight upstairs and hugged me. You're okay? Yeah. Did he touch you? No. Did you open anything? No. She closed her eyes for a second. Okay. We sat in the living room. I told her everything again. When I mentioned the name Daniel, she shook her head. I don't know anyone named Daniel. I knew you didn't. She looked toward the kitchen. Did he say anything else? He asked me to open the window. Did you? No. Good. She took a deep breath. Then she said, There's something I haven't told you. I looked at her. What? About 2 weeks ago, somebody came to my office asking about you. I stared at her. Why? He said he was a family friend. Do you know him? No. Then why didn't you tell me? I thought it was nothing. Mom. I know. She looked exhausted. He knew your name. I didn't say anything. That was the part that bothered me most. The police came back that evening. They asked my mom about the man. They also checked security footage from a neighbor's camera. A dark sedan had been parked down the street for almost an hour before the man appeared at our kitchen window. The plate was partially visible. The police couldn't identify the driver. But the next morning, they told us the same vehicle had been seen near 2 other homes in the area. Both houses had been burglarized. That was when everything became real. He hadn't just picked our house randomly. Someone had been watching. My mom installed cameras around the house that weekend. She also replaced the locks. For a while, nothing happened. A couple of months passed. I stopped thinking about it. Then one Friday night, I was home alone again. Mom had gone to pick up my brother from a friend's house. I was sitting on the couch watching a movie. At around 9:15, someone knocked on the front door. I didn't move. The knock came again. I looked at the camera screen beside the TV. There was a man standing on the porch. I couldn't see his face clearly. He was wearing a dark jacket. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Mom, don't open the door. I stared at the message. Then another one appeared. Mom, I'm watching the camera. I looked at the screen again. The man was still standing there. He wasn't knocking anymore, he was just looking toward the camera. Then he slowly turned around and walked away. I called Mom. She answered. Did you see him? Yes. Stay inside. I am. I already called the police. Okay. There was a pause, then she said, Haley? Yeah? I'm glad you didn't open the door that first day. I looked toward the kitchen. So am I. The police came. They searched the neighborhood but didn't find him. Eventually, the report stopped. We never got a definite answer about who he was. The police believed he was connected to several break-ins in the area, but they couldn't prove that he was the same person who had been outside our house. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. What I do know is that he knew my name. He knew my mother wasn't home. He knew when I was alone. And he knew enough about our family to make me believe, for just a few seconds, that he actually belonged there. That's what still bothers me. Not the knocking, not the window, not even the fact that someone had been sitting outside our house watching us. It was how normal he sounded. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten me. He didn't try to break the window. He just stood there and calmly asked me to let him in. And if my mother hadn't called me right before that happened, I might have believed him. I might have unlocked the door. I might have opened it. I still think about that whenever I'm home alone, because sometimes the person you need to worry about isn't the one trying to break into your house. Sometimes it's the person trying to convince you to open the door for him. I was 14 when my parents left me alone in our house for the first time after dark. I remember being more excited than nervous. My parents had to drive to my aunt's house for a family dinner, and because I had school the next morning, they decided I could stay home. Before leaving, my mom stood by the kitchen counter and gave me the usual speech. Keep the doors locked. I will. Don't open the door for anybody. I know. And if anything feels wrong, call us. I smiled. Mom, I'm going to watch TV and sleep. Nothing's going to happen. She laughed. That's what everyone says. My dad was already waiting outside. Come on, he called. My mom grabbed her purse. Love you. Love you too. A few minutes later, their car disappeared at the end of our street. I locked the front door and checked it twice. Then I went back to my room. Our house was an old two-story place in a quiet neighborhood called Fairview Heights. Nothing exciting ever happened there. The neighbors knew each other. People walked their dogs at night, and I'd never heard of anyone getting robbed. So being alone didn't scare me. At least, not yet. Around 8:30, my friend Mason stopped by. He lived nearby, and my parents had said he could stay for a couple of hours. We played games in the living room and ordered pizza. At one point, Mason looked toward the ceiling. Your house always make that noise? What noise? He waited. There was a faint creaking sound above us. I shrugged. Old house. He laughed. Sounds like somebody walking. Don't start. We ignored it. Around 10:30, Mason's mom called. He stood up. I gotta go. Already? She wants me home. He put on his shoes. At the door, he looked upstairs. You sure you're good? Yeah. You want me to stay? I laughed. No. He smiled. Okay. But if you hear your ghost walking around, don't blame me. Get out. He laughed and left. I locked the door behind him. Then I went upstairs to get my phone charger. That's when I noticed the hallway light was on. I stopped halfway up the stairs. I was almost certain I'd turned that light off earlier. I stood there for a few seconds. Then I called out, Mom? Nothing. I laughed quietly at myself. You're seriously getting scared of a light? I walked upstairs and switched it off. Then I went back downstairs. About 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Not creaking, not pipes, footsteps. 1, 2, then silence. I muted the TV. My heart started beating harder. I stared at the staircase. Hello? Nothing. I waited. Then another step. This time it came from directly above me. I picked up my phone. I called Mason. He answered. What? Are you home? Yeah. Did you come back? There was a pause. No. Why? I heard something upstairs. He immediately stopped joking. Lock the door. It is. Then don't go upstairs. I looked at the staircase. I wasn't going to. Call your parents. I opened my mom's contact. Before I could press call, something moved upstairs. A shadow briefly passed across the hallway wall. I couldn't breathe. Mason. What? I saw something. What did you see? I don't know. Go outside. I didn't argue. I grabbed my shoes and walked toward the front door. I was trying to move quietly. Then I heard a door upstairs slam. I ran. I opened the front door and sprinted across the street to Mason's house. His mom opened the door. What's going on? I was barely able to speak. Someone's in my house. She immediately pulled me inside. Are you sure? No, but I heard someone upstairs. Mason was still on the phone with me. His mom took the phone. She listened for a moment, then called the police. I called my parents. My dad answered. What's wrong? Someone is inside the house. What? I heard footsteps upstairs. Where are you? At Mason's. Stay there. His voice was calm, but I could tell he was scared. We're coming home. The police arrived before my parents. 2 officers went inside. We watched from across the street. 1 officer checked the downstairs rooms. The other went upstairs. Then they disappeared from view. A few minutes passed. 1 officer came back outside. He asked me, was the upstairs hallway light on when you went upstairs earlier? Yes. Did you turn it off? Yeah. He nodded. Okay. Something about his tone made my stomach drop. What? He looked toward the house. We found an open window upstairs. My mouth went dry. Was someone inside? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, we're still searching. Another few minutes passed. Then I saw the 2nd officer walk downstairs. He was holding something. A small backpack. My backpack. I hadn't even realized it was missing. He walked outside. Where did you last see this? In my bedroom. He nodded. It was in the upstairs hallway. I stared at him. I didn't put it there. I know. Then he looked at his partner. They went back inside. About 5 minutes later, they brought someone out. A man. He was probably in his 20s or 30s, thin, dirty, and wearing a dark jacket. His hands were cuffed behind his back. I stared at him. He looked directly at me. Then he smiled. Just slightly. That was the moment I completely lost it. I stepped backward. My mom and dad arrived seconds later. My mom ran toward me and hugged me. I couldn't stop shaking. The police later explained what they believed had happened. The man had entered through an upstairs window while Mason and I were downstairs. He had been hiding inside the house the entire time. The footsteps I'd heard were him moving through the hallway. The light had been turned on by him, and at some point, he'd taken my backpack from my bedroom and left it outside the room. The police never figured out exactly why. They also found a knife in the room where he'd been hiding. I kept thinking about something the officer had told me. If I had gone upstairs when I first heard the footsteps, I probably would have walked straight into him. Instead, I stayed downstairs. And when I finally decided to leave, I didn't try to investigate, I just ran. That decision probably saved me from finding out what he intended to do. For months afterward, I couldn't sleep alone. Every little sound made me sit up. A floorboard, a pipe, a door moving in the wind. I'd check the hallway before going back to bed. I'd check the windows. I'd check the locks. My parents eventually installed cameras and better locks, but honestly, those things weren't what changed me. That night did. Because before then, I thought being afraid meant you were imagining something. Now I understand that sometimes your brain notices something before you consciously understand what it is. That strange feeling, that sudden silence, that sound that doesn't belong. You don't have to know exactly what's wrong to take yourself seriously. That night I had no proof someone was inside. I only had footsteps, a light that shouldn't have been on, and a feeling I couldn't explain. But I listened to it, and I'm glad I did. Because when the police finally found the man inside my house, I realized something I still think about whenever I'm alone. The scariest part wasn't hearing someone walk upstairs. It was knowing that for hours I had been sitting downstairs believing I was alone. I wasn't. I was 13 the first time I realized that being home alone can make ordinary sounds feel completely different. It was a Friday night in late July, and my mother had been called into work unexpectedly. She was a night nurse at a private recovery center called Pine Hollow, a small medical facility almost 40 minutes from the nearest town. The place was expensive, quiet, and surrounded by hundreds of acres of forest. We lived in a small rented house on the edge of the property because my mother worked there. There weren't many houses around us. Ours sat at the end of a gravel road, with one older couple living in a house about half a mile away. Most people would probably have hated living somewhere that isolated. I actually liked it. At least I did until that night. My mom had been working nights there for almost 2 years. She usually left around 9:30 and came home sometime after 7 in the morning. Our routine was simple. She'd make sure I had food, remind me not to stay up too late, lock the front door, and leave. That Friday, she was already putting on her jacket when she stopped beside my bedroom door. "You've got everything you need?" I looked away from my computer. "Yeah." "Phone charged?" "Mom, I'm serious. It's at 80%. She smiled. "Okay, if you need me, call." "You say that every time. Because every time you act like you're completely independent until something happens." I laughed. "Nothing's going to happen." She pointed at me. "That's exactly what people say before something happens." I rolled my eyes. She walked toward the front door, then turned around. "And lock it after I leave." "I will." She opened the door. The gravel outside crunched underneath her shoes. Then she stopped. "Oh, and don't open the door for anyone." "I know. Even if they say they're from the clinic. Mom, nobody from the clinic is coming here at 10 at night." "Good. Then you won't have a problem." She left. I heard the car start. A few seconds later, the headlights disappeared between the trees. Then the house became completely quiet. That was normal. But there was something I hadn't mentioned. Earlier that week, my mother had lost her main set of house keys. She'd searched her car, her locker at work, even the clinic parking lot. Nothing. She still had a spare set, so we didn't think much about it. At least, not then. That night I ordered pizza, played video games, and stayed up later than I was supposed to. Around 11:40, I was sitting on the floor in front of the television when I heard something outside. At first I ignored it. It sounded like gravel moving. I paused the game. Nothing. I waited. Then I heard it again. Crunch. I looked toward the living room window. The curtains were closed. I could see a faint reflection of myself in the glass. "Probably an animal," I whispered. We had deer around the property all the time. I unpaused the game. About 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Mom, you okay?" I smiled and typed back. "Me. Yeah. Why?" She replied almost immediately. "Mom, just checking." "Me. I'm good. Go work." She sent a laughing emoji. I put my phone down. Then I heard the gravel again. This time it was closer. I stopped playing. There was a long pause. Then I heard something that made me sit completely still. The sound of footsteps, not running, walking, slowly, across the gravel toward our house. My first thought was that my mother had forgotten something, but then I remembered her car. If she had come back, I would have heard it. That gravel road was impossible to drive on quietly. I grabbed my phone and looked at the time. 11:53. I almost called my mom. Then I heard the front door handle move. I froze. The handle turned once, stopped, then turned again. My stomach dropped. Someone was trying to open the door. I got up slowly. "Mom?" No answer. I didn't move closer. The handle stopped. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard a faint metallic sound, like a key being inserted into a lock. My entire body went cold. I backed away from the living room. The lock clicked. The front door opened. I didn't scream. I don't know why. I think my brain simply refused to accept what was happening. The door opened slowly, and someone stepped inside. I couldn't see their face. They were standing mostly in darkness. I immediately moved backward toward my bedroom. My phone was still in my hand. I wanted to call 911, but my thumb wouldn't cooperate. Then I heard the door close. The person didn't say anything. They just stood there. A few seconds passed. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Across the wooden floor. I backed into my bedroom and quietly pushed the door almost closed. I didn't shut it completely because I was afraid the latch would make noise. The footsteps continued. One step, then another, then another. Whoever it was wasn't wandering around randomly. They were moving through the house like they knew where things were. I heard a cabinet open, then another. The kitchen light suddenly came on. A thin strip of light appeared underneath my bedroom door. I stopped breathing. I could hear the person moving around the kitchen. A drawer opened, closed, another drawer, then silence. I thought maybe they were looking for money, or food, or something else. Then I heard them walk toward my room. My heart started beating so hard that I was convinced they could hear it. The footsteps stopped directly outside my bedroom. I stared at the tiny gap beneath the door. A shadow appeared. Someone was standing there. I covered my mouth with my hand. The shadow didn't move. 5 seconds passed. 10. 20. Then I heard a quiet voice. "Hello?" It was a man's voice. Not loud, almost casual. I didn't answer. The silence returned. Then he said, "I know you're awake." Every muscle in my body tightened. I still didn't move. The door slowly opened another inch. I could see the edge of a shoe. Then the door stopped. The man didn't come inside. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Finally, he stepped away. I heard him walk back toward the kitchen. I immediately grabbed my phone and opened the emergency call screen. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it. Before I could press anything, I heard the front door open. Then silence. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't trust it. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I still didn't move. At some point I heard the gravel outside, footsteps moving away from the house. I waited another 15 minutes before I finally called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. She immediately noticed. "What's wrong?" "Mom, are you okay?" Someone was in the house. There was a pause. "What?" Someone came inside. Her voice changed completely. "Where are you?" "In my room." "Lock the door." "It's locked." "Stay there, I'm calling the police." I heard her breathing, then she asked, "Did you see them?" "Not really." "What did they do?" "They walked around." "Did they touch you?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." She was silent for a second. Then she said, "I'm coming home." "You can't." "I don't care." "Mom, you're at work." "I'll leave." "No, just stay there. The police are coming." She hesitated. "Okay, stay on the phone with me." I stayed on the phone until the police arrived. It took them around 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. When I finally heard their vehicles outside, I started crying. I hadn't even realized I was crying until then. 2 officers searched the house. They found no one. The front door wasn't damaged. The windows were locked. Nothing appeared to be missing. One officer asked me to explain exactly what happened. I told him everything. He listened carefully. Then he asked, "Did you recognize the voice?" "No." "Could it have been your mother?" "No." "Are you sure?" "I heard her leave." He nodded. Then he asked something that made my stomach drop. "Did your mother lose any keys recently?" I stared at him. "How do you know that?" He looked at the other officer. "Because there's no sign of forced entry." My mother arrived about 20 minutes later. She hugged me so tightly that I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's not your fault." She pulled away and looked at me. "Did he come into your room?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." She looked toward the officers. One of them said, "We'll file the report, but I'd strongly recommend changing every lock." My mother nodded. "We will." The next morning, we changed the locks. She also installed a heavy bar across the front door. For the next few weeks, I slept with my bedroom door locked. But there was something strange about the whole thing. Nothing was stolen. Not the television, not my game console, not my mother's purse. Nothing. Whoever entered the house seemed to be looking for something. We couldn't figure out what. Then, about a month later, my mother got a call from the clinic. A maintenance worker had found something near the edge of the parking lot. It was a small key ring. My mother's missing keys. They had apparently been sitting in the dirt behind an old storage building. When my mother told me, neither of us said anything for a while. Then I asked, "Could those keys have been used?" She looked at me. "I don't know. But whoever came inside had a key." She nodded. That was the part that bothered us. If the person had found those keys, they would have had access to our house. But there was another question. How would they have known which house the keys belonged to? There were no labels on them, nothing identifying our address, and our house was more than a mile from the clinic. Someone would have had to know where my mother lived. That possibility scared me more than the idea of a random stranger. A few months later, my mother quit working nights. We moved away shortly afterward. I never found out who entered our house. I don't know if it was someone from the clinic, someone who lived nearby, or simply a stranger who happened to find my mother's keys. But I still remember one detail more clearly than anything else. The man's voice. "I know you're awake." Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had answered him, or if I had opened my bedroom door, or if I'd decided to investigate the noise instead of staying where I was. I don't know why I suddenly felt like turning everything off and going to bed that night. I wasn't tired. I hadn't planned to sleep. But something in me kept saying, "Go to your room." So I did. And when that person entered the house a few minutes later, I was already behind a closed door, lying completely still. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was luck. I don't know. But to this day, whenever I hear someone walking around outside my house at night, I don't look through the window, I don't check the door, and I definitely don't answer. Because sometimes the safest thing you can do when you're home alone is nothing at all. I was 19 when my mother had to leave me alone for the weekend, and at the time I honestly didn't think anything of it. We lived in a 2-bedroom house at the end of a quiet street in a town called Millbrook. There wasn't much around us. A grocery store, a gas station, a few restaurants, and then mostly houses. My mother had lived there for almost 8 years, so she knew nearly everyone on our street. I didn't. I was taking classes at the local community college, and usually stayed busy enough that I wasn't home much. That weekend was different because I'd finished my assignments early and had no plans. My mother had to work an overnight shift at the nursing home where she was a supervisor. Before leaving, she stood in the doorway of my room. "You sure you're okay?" I looked away from my laptop. "Mom, I've stayed home alone before." "I know. I'm just asking." "You're only going to be gone one night." "Probably." I laughed. "Probably?" She smiled. Things get busy there. She picked up her keys and headed downstairs. At the front door, she stopped again. Lock this after me. I will. And don't open the door if someone knocks. I know. She gave me that look mothers give when they think you're pretending to listen. I mean it. I heard you. She finally left. I watched her car disappear at the end of the street, locked the door, and went back upstairs. Nothing unusual happened for the next few hours. I ordered food around 8, watched half a movie, then played games until almost midnight. Around 12:15, I went downstairs to get some water. As I walked past the front window, I noticed a car parked across the street. It was an older silver sedan. I didn't think much of it. People parked there all the time. I got my water and went back upstairs. About 20 minutes later, I heard a car door close outside. I stopped the movie. For some reason, I listened. Nothing followed. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps on the pavement. They stopped. Then came a knock. 3 quick knocks. I looked at the time. 12:38 a.m. I didn't move. Another knock. I walked downstairs and stopped halfway down the stairs. Who is it? No answer. I waited a few seconds. Then a man's voice said, "Sorry, I thought this was another house." His voice sounded completely normal. I didn't recognize it. "Okay," I said. There was a pause. Then he said, "Your mother isn't home?" I didn't answer. He knocked once more. "I'm sorry. Wrong house." His footsteps moved away. I stood there for another minute before checking the window. The silver car was still across the street. I couldn't see the driver. I went back upstairs and called my mother. She answered after a few rings. "Hey, everything okay? Did you tell anyone I was staying home?" There was a short silence. "No, why?" "Some guy just knocked." "What guy?" "I don't know. He said he had the wrong house." "Did you open the door?" "No." "Good." She sounded more awake now. "What did he look like?" "I didn't see him." "Did he say anything else?" I hesitated. "He asked if you were home." My mother didn't respond immediately. Then she said, "Lock the back door too." "It is." "Check it anyway." I did. It was locked. My mother stayed on the phone while I checked the downstairs windows. Everything was fine. "Probably nothing," she said. "You don't sound like you believe that." "I don't know what to believe. Just keep the doors locked." "Okay." We talked for another couple of minutes before she had to go. I went back upstairs. I tried to continue my movie, but I kept looking toward the window. The silver car eventually drove away. That made me feel better. Around 2, I went to bed. I remember falling asleep almost immediately. The next thing I remember was my phone vibrating on the nightstand. I reached for it without opening my eyes. No message. It had been a notification from a delivery app. I put the phone back down. Then I heard something downstairs, a light tapping sound. I sat up. For a few seconds I thought it was the heating system. Then it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. I checked the time. 3:11 a.m. I got out of bed and opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dark. I didn't turn on the light. I stood there listening. Nothing. Then someone knocked on the front door. I immediately shut my bedroom door. The knocking continued. 3 times. Exactly like before. I grabbed my phone and called my mother. She answered quickly. "What's wrong?" "Someone's at the door again." "What time is it?" 3:11. She went quiet. "Did they say anything?" "No." Then the man spoke. His voice came from downstairs. "Hey, Josh." I stopped. I had never told him my name. My mother heard him through the phone. "Josh, go into your room and lock the door." I did. "Mom, how does he know my name?" "I don't know." "Did you tell somebody?" "No." The man knocked again. Then he said, "Your mom said you were here." I looked at the phone. My mother was still there. "I didn't say that," she whispered. The man laughed softly. It wasn't a crazy laugh. That was what made it worse. It sounded like someone trying not to laugh. I moved away from the door. My mother said, "Call the police." I am. I put the phone on speaker and dialed emergency services. While it rang, I heard the front door handle move. Once. Then again. The dispatcher answered. I gave them the address and explained that I was upstairs and someone was trying to get inside. The dispatcher told me to stay in my room. I sat on the floor beside my bed. The door handle downstairs moved again. Then I heard a hard shove against the front door. The whole house made a dull cracking sound. I whispered, "He's trying to get in." The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. I didn't look outside. I didn't want him to know where I was standing. For about a minute, there was nothing. Then I heard footsteps. I expected them to move away. Instead, they stopped outside the front door. The man spoke again. "Josh?" I didn't answer. "I know you're upstairs." I felt sick. The dispatcher asked if he had entered the house. "I don't know." Then came another sound, a metallic scrape. It sounded like someone putting something against the door. The man tried the handle again. This time the lock held. He cursed under his breath. Then he stepped away. I heard his footsteps move around the side of the house. My bedroom was at the front, so I could hear something brushing against the outside wall. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. A text message. From an unknown number. It said, "You don't have to hide." I stared at it. Another message arrived. "I can wait." I showed the dispatcher. They told me not to respond. I didn't. For the next several minutes, nothing happened. I could hear my own breathing. Then I heard a car engine outside. I thought he was leaving, but the engine didn't move. It just stayed running. The police arrived about 7 minutes later. I heard the sirens before I saw the flashing lights through the gap in my curtains. The car outside pulled away immediately. I stayed in my room until an officer came upstairs. "Josh?" "Yes." "Police. You can come out." I opened the door. There were 2 officers downstairs. One of them asked me to describe the man. I told them I hadn't seen him properly. He knew my name. "Did he say your mother's name?" "No." "Did you recognize his voice?" "No." They searched the house and checked the backyard. Nobody was there. The front door wasn't damaged, but there were fresh scratches around the lock. One officer took pictures. Then he asked me something strange. "Does your family have any connection to a man named Eric?" "No." "Your neighbor said someone was standing near your mailbox earlier this evening." I shook my head. "I didn't see anyone." The officer nodded. "All right." They stayed another 15 minutes before leaving. I didn't sleep. My mother came home just after 7. She walked inside, saw the police card they'd left on the kitchen counter, and immediately called me downstairs. "What happened?" I told her everything. When I mentioned the text messages, her face changed. "Show me." I handed her my phone. She read both messages twice. Then she sat down. "Mom?" She didn't answer. "Do you know who this is?" She looked at me. "No." I could tell she wasn't telling me everything. "Mom." She sighed. "About a month ago, someone started coming to the nursing home asking questions about me." "What kind of questions?" "Where I lived, what time I worked, whether I had children." I stared at her. "You didn't think that was important?" "I thought it was some confused relative of a patient." "Did you ever see him?" "No." "Was it this guy?" "I don't know." She looked at the message again. Then she said something that I still remember. "He knew you were home." We contacted the police again that morning. They took the messages from my phone and checked the number, but it had been registered through an online service and couldn't be connected to a person. The silver sedan was never found. The officers also checked cameras from a nearby gas station. They found a car matching the description passing through the area several times that night. The plate couldn't be read clearly. Nothing came from it. For the next few weeks, I didn't stay home alone. If my mother worked overnight, I stayed at a friend's house. Eventually, things went back to normal. We never heard from the man again. We also never found out how he knew my name. But there was one detail I remembered later. The first time he'd knocked, when he said he'd come to the wrong house, I had looked through the small window beside the front door. I hadn't seen his face, but I remembered seeing his hand. He was holding something. At the time, I thought it was his phone. Months later, my mother mentioned that she'd lost an old photograph from work. It was a group picture taken years earlier at the nursing home. I asked what it looked like. She described the picture. Then she said one of the people in it had been a former employee who had quit unexpectedly. I asked his name. She said Eric. I never found out if it was the same man. My mother didn't want to talk about it after that. And honestly, neither did I. Because there was no proof, no clear photograph, no plate number, no arrest, just a stranger who appeared at our house twice, knew my name, knew my mother worked nights, and somehow knew I was alone. 2 years later, I still check the door before going to sleep. Not because I think that man is coming back. I just learned something that weekend. When you're alone in a house, you don't need to hear someone break in to know you're in danger. Sometimes all it takes is a stranger standing outside your door and knowing your name.